I'm here with Nikhil and my partners in this initiative, the DLT Science Foundation, and I will welcome you now. So, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, thank you to be here at these launch events and a launch event of the DLT Science Foundation. And I hope and I think that most of you know what DLT means. It stands for Distributed Ledger Technology. But you may ask why we need a foundation on DLT. Why DLT Science Foundation? Well, if you look at the technology itself, in an abstract term, you can have three types of technologies, right? You can have a surface technology, which are basically those technologies that change some aspects of a given service or product or process. You may have some genuine technologies, innovations that basically bring to the market new product and services or processes. And then at the very bottom, you have the so-called foundational technologies. These are technologies that do not indeed deliver any products or service to the market, but they are changing the underpinning infrastructure of our socioeconomic systems. And blockchain is one of these technologies. It's a foundational technology. So, well, it's not fancy now, maybe as the AI. Everybody's talking about AI, artificial intelligence, because they have their killer app that we use every day. I use every day, multiple times, ChatGPT. ChatGPT is the killer app that enable the AI to reach the mass adoption. But if you look in retrospective, how long it took for AI to go to market, it took more than 50 years, right? So particularly for the natural language processing, that is the technology behind the ChatGPT and instruments like that. So blockchain was invented indeed. The change, the structural change and the innovation was brought to the market in 2008, and indeed the first implementation. So the invention first in 2008 with the white paper, and then the innovation with the adoption of the Bitcoin, the first transaction in January 2009 is basically roughly 13 years old. So I'm not saying that we need to wait 40 years now to get the first killer app of blockchain. Probably, given that we are in exponential growth of the technologies, maybe we need another 20 years, but not 10 years, more than 10 years. So AI has found integration in numerous parts of our society, industries, and applications. And blockchain is still, forging its path outside the cryptocurrency. It's very difficult, but we are doing these things. So we are in the so-called era of technological ferment, which is characterized by variety, competitions, rivalry, uncertainty, and technology fragmentation. So that's why we need the DLT Science Foundation. So our mission is to create an equitable, open society using exponential technologies, in particular DLT technology, and the leverage on the strong bond that exists between the scientific discovery and the advancements in society. This is our mission. And we thank, of course, Hedera. And we want to express our gratitude to Hedera Hashgraph, the principal donor behind this foundation. They supported us and they have been the bedrock of our initiative. Demonstrated commendable vision and commitment to advance the adoption of blockchain technologies in the world. Their generosity and the steadfast belief in the foundation mission has been instrumental in shaping our trajectory. So my heartfelt thank you to the Hedera Hashgraph for their visionary support. And since many of the Hedera key people are here, Mance Harmon is over there, the co-inventor of the Hashgraph and the co-founder of Hedera. We have people from the board, the head of policy, and many other people. This is not just, a launch event, but I hope this can become a celebration of the collaboration and the collective effort that we have brought together up to this point. So what does indeed, in practical terms, DSF, that is the acronym of DLT Science Foundation, do and bring to the market? So we have three main areas of activities, which are education, research, and innovation. So in terms of education, we promote activities around the different curriculum and courses and the enrichment of existing curriculum with a range of cases and covering different types of blockchain technologies and share materials to best enable best-in-class learning. When it comes to research, we have a long-term vision to face the grand challenges. So we are trying to solve big problems, and we are going to promote research that are breakthrough making. Innovation instead is about knowledge transfer. So we do organize roundtables, workshops, and innovative programs like hackathons, entrepreneurial transfer, knowledge transfer between researchers and entrepreneurs with commercialization of early stage academic research projects. So with this our activity along these three areas, which is education, research, innovation, what we do is to bring to the surface those blockchain technologies that aren't recognized to gain the foothold in the academic community. We want to increase their citations and patent citations and fuel their research and development. Exactly because what I said before, we are in the era of the ferment, of the fragmentation. We launched recently, officially in mid-March 2023 at the Paris Blockchain Week, so roughly 3 months ago. And let me briefly list what we achieved so far. At the moment, we have received 40 university network applications. We do support and we work with the university network. We are working at the moment with 6 universities. And thank you for all the university representatives that are here today. But we have many other universities that are joining us. We have, started to scale up our activities with our team, 20 plus people. We have started to organize important conferences. I can mention a few of them, like the Crypto Asset Analytics Workshop this year. In Texas, that was co-located at the Web Conference 2023. Many conferences at Brown Bags, the Future of Money took place yesterday at UCL, for example, with FCA representative and members from the Chambers of the Commerce and other from HSBC, etc. We are organizing ESG workshops, staking workshops, and many workshops for students. In the next 2 months, we are going to organize 2 hackathons on Hedera technology, which roughly will have 200 attendees in terms of people that will compete, and those and some other events. In terms of scientific outreach, we have published or are going to be published already since we launched 10 scientific articles in the top journals, and we are already in contact with the regulators all over the world. Some of you may know that I was a former central banker. So we responded recently to the UK government consultation on digital assets. We took part a couple of days ago at the roundtable forum organized by central banks in Zurich, discussing about blockchain sustainability and looking at what are the blockchains that are more sustainable in the ecosystem. And then we started our funding projects with our academic partners. Right.
So thank you, Paolo. Let me talk a little bit, just very briefly, because we're running against the clock always at these events, about some of the projects that we have funded. One of these in particular, or two of these in particular, you're going to be hearing from today, who are going to be presenting. One of them will be from Alastair Moore, who will be talking about their particular project with Songbits, which involves rock and roll Hall of Famer Dave Stewart from the Eurythmics, where they're trying to build a platform for tokenization of music. We, of course, have as well Michael Donovan here, who is an Academy Award winner, who is working with researchers at UCL on a project we funded at Mint Road called Mint Road, where they're coming up with a new model to reinvent Hollywood. We have funded other universities, for example, Peking University. We are funding the decentralized AI lab there, which is actually the convergence between AI and blockchain coming together, something that will be more important going forward. We have given education grants as well. For example, at UCL, we're running a series of digital economy and fintech education sessions. Again, one of the Future of Money session that occurred yesterday here in London was one of the activities that was funded through one of the grants that we have given out. One of the other projects as well, still remaining in the media sector, is on the tokenization of media elements. Again, we have researchers working here with the ISO committee about coming up with standards for tokenization of particular digital files and tokenization methods. We ourselves are also engaging in particular projects as well. It's not just that we are giving grants to particular partners, but we are building products and tools that we believe will be essential to the market as well. For instance, we're looking at the charitable or the charity space as well, with, for example, starting a project that you'll be seeing soon within that particular space, looking at trust and transparency in the charity world. Next week, we'll be announcing more projects that we've funded from other universities as well. And our aim, of course, is to be an authoritative voice for the blockchain ecosystem at large. And of course, with the support of Hedera, to ensure that they technologies that we believe in are at the forefront of making change with decentralized technologies. Our mission is to spread the message that crypto just isn't things like FTX. It's about moving the conversation forward about what we can really achieve with these particular technologies. And for instance, ourselves, we have been participating in many events. Paolo recently was the Point Zero Forum on a roundtable on blockchain sustainability, talking with the Bank of Italy, the EU Parliament, the European Central Bank. Even then, correcting opinions that are still present in the room that energy consumption by blockchain is something that is really a very, very bad thing in comparison to all the new technologies that exist. We have much more coming up in the future as well. One of the key events that we'll have is actually the P2P conference that we organize, a central banking conference on the future of financial technology in that particular space. This year we'll be running in Rome at the Central Bank of Italy on the 26th and 27th of September. So something to look forward to. That's the end of our introduction to the DLT Science Foundation. Let me quickly just introduce some of the order or schedule that we'll be seeing today. First, we'll have Mance Harmon being interviewed by Max Walker-Williams, whose discussion will focus around Hedera and how Hedera fits in the blockchain world. Next, we have Timothy Lane, former Deputy Governor of the Bank of Canada, who will be interviewed by Nilmini Rubin, Chief of Policy at Hedera, discussing how financial institutions will adapt to future digital needs. And then after, we will have two of our grantees presenting, Alastair Moore from Project Songbits, Michael Donovan from the project Mint Road. And then, last but not least, we will have an all-female panel talking about restoring trust in cryptocurrencies, a key topic that the DSF is passionate about. And here, Kristina, Lucrezia, Cornèr, Editor-in-Chief of Cointelegraph will moderate a panel composed of Fariel Salahuddin, founder and CEO of Uptrade, Teana Baker-Taylor, VP of Policy and Regulatory Strategy at Circle, Auronda Scalera, Curator Art Dubai, and Director of the Infinity Art Museum. And I'm glad to report that today we had, well, some people were informing me that the weather would not be as good as it may be, as we see it is, and fingers crossed it will be, that afterwards we'll be able to enjoy a drinks reception outside in the garden area of this very, very nice location that we find ourselves in. So let me hand over to Paolo to introduce our first speakers.
So very quickly, so I'm very glad to welcome here on stage the co-founder of Hedera, the co-inventor of Hashgraph, the co-CEO of Sword Lab, Mance Harmon, with a diverse background in cybersecurity and software development. He hold a master in computer science from the University of Massachusetts and a bachelor from Mississippi State University, and was also in Force at the US Force Academy. Thank you, Mance, to be here.
Thank you. Thank you.
And we have Max. He's an amazing person I met a few months ago, had the opportunity to be interviewed by him. Max Walker-Williams. He's a self-made entrepreneur and owns a diverse mix of companies, from a five-star hotel chain, we would like to know more later, and a property portfolio to children's care and cryptography-based startup. Max was an early believer and investor in Hedera Hashgraph, and covers Hedera in depth in explanation videos and interviews on his YouTube channel, which I recommend you to follow, and the social media channels. Thank you, Max, Mance. We have, unfortunately, only 20 minutes, and our gentleman here will be very strict with the time, but the floor is yours.
I don't think I've ever done a video that's less than an hour.
No.
So this, I'm going to shut up and let you speak, because if I start talking, we're done. So thank you so much, Mance, for taking the time to talk with all of us here today. We all really appreciate it, and I know I certainly do. Jumping straight into it, how did yours and Lehman, the other co-founder of Hedera Hashgraph, of course, how did your scientific backgrounds sort of influence the vision you had for Hedera Hashgraph?
Well, first off, thank you for allowing me to be here today. I appreciate the opportunity to come and support the DSF and all that they're doing. How did our backgrounds influence the way that we approach Hedera and the vision of Hedera?
Yeah.
Well, we're both computer scientists at heart and by training and profession. And so from the earliest days, we've approached problem solving in pretty much the same way. And that is a skill that I believe that you learn, you certainly can learn when going through a computer science curriculum. I personally believe that all students should be required to learn how to do some basic level of programming. But basically, the idea is functional decomposition of really complex problem sets into manageable components, decompose them into manageable problem sets that can each individually be resolved, and then integrate those back together to create a complete solution. We've always focused on trying to understand problems at their most fundamental level and applying first principles to building the solution. Hedera was no different. It started with an invention that Lehman created back in 2015. He actually started in 2012, chewing on, so to speak, a math problem, a really difficult math problem to solve in the field of distributed consensus. Namely, the problem was that how do you create a consensus algorithm that would both be secure, actually achieve the theoretical limit of what was possible in terms of consensus security, while simultaneously achieving fantastic performance. There had always been this trade-off between the two. If you wanted better security, you sacrifice performance. If you wanted better performance, you would sacrifice security. The field has been around for decades. It's not a new field. The blockchain approach that was proposed in 2008 is a different approach to solving the same category of problems, but there's a fantastic long literature on this class of problems. And Lehman wanted to solve one of the fundamental problems in the field. He worked for years on that. And in 2015, he sort of, what I refer to say is cracked the nut. He cracked the nut of solving that particular problem. And today we call that the hash graph. It was a significant advance in the state of the art in the field of distributed consensus. We believe that the problem of distributed consensus is a solved problem. There are a lot of other problems that are related that need to be addressed. Hash graph solves the problem. So we also, though, recognized that the technology was only one side of the coin. And if you want to create something that can be market leading and win the market, so to speak, on a global basis, equally important was the governance of the technology and the platform. And so we spent quite a lot of time using the same skills that we had learned through our careers, thinking about a governance model that would scale and be adopted by the world's most important organizations on a global basis. And so it was through that process that we came up with the governing council today. Of course, UCL and LSE and IIT Madras are parts of that council. They're members of that council. They help to govern this global platform that today is provided by Hedera. But the earliest skills that made all of this possible really come from the training in computer science.
Okay, thank you very much. I think you always understand how significant the breakthrough was. You know, for literally thousands of years, in one way or another, people were trying to solve this problem. The Byzantine fault-tolerant problem, and Lehman did it in 3 years. So it's not bad going at all. It was a big nut. It was a big nut that he cracked.
Yeah.
So why is education and scientific exploration into DLT really important?
Right. Now, well, we believe that the problem of BFT, in fact, in this case, asynchronous Byzantine fault tolerance, is a solved problem. There are a lot of other problems that need to be solved. Yeah. And we're only talking about what you might think of as the bottom layer of the tech stack, meaning that there's consensus. There are token economics issues that are, critical to be addressed when scaling a system like this. Governance, I've already mentioned, is incredibly important in instilling the trust that is required by the market into the organization that is providing this infrastructure that so many large other organizations are going to build their solutions on top of. They need to trust that the governance model itself is going to provide what they need for the long haul. That's just at the DLT layer. And then on top of that, solutions get built on a vertical by vertical basis. Each one of those verticals has a whole set of problems that need to be addressed. And of course, what we're doing here with the DSF is providing that foundation that is so critical to understanding the problems, to training those that are going to be instrumental in the innovation process to find the solutions to those problems. It's building the academic and intellectual firepower that is going to be needed to address the market and the problems that are presented in scaling this category of technology and taking us to a fully realized Web 3.0.
And why did Hedera specifically choose, the DLT Science Foundation to support, and what importance does that play for Hedera, do you think?
Well, for Hedera, we've always placed a premium on the academic side of this. When Lehman started down this path of solving the problem, it wasn't enough to come up with an algorithm. He came up with the algorithm. Then there was a long, arduous process of proving the properties of the algorithm that were in fact part of the algorithm, proving that the characteristics we believe to exist in the algorithm actually do exist. And then taking that proof and having others in the academic community apply formal methods to ensure that the proof itself was correct. And so again, going back to first principles and ensuring that the foundation on which we are building is rock solid. If you start with a brick when building that foundation, the building that you end up realizing building itself is going to be very different than if you don't. And we sort of recognize that from the beginning. Paolo and team and the rest of the academic organizations that are part of the council, and now growing with the larger foundation, they're going to be the ones that help us scale those efforts and ensure that that foundation remains solid as we go forward into the years and decades to come.
Amazing. And then looking to the future, what, of course, science's work will never be done. There's always another problem to solve. But what would you like to see? Do you have any personal preferences or personalized outcomes that you'd like to see from something like the DFS?
Specific things that I would like to see from the DSF. Well, I can tell you that we have some special interests in our, just personal interests.
Yeah, sure.
If we were to think about categories of use cases, we do have a special interest in ESG. And I think that there is a lot of opportunity there to use DLT and the properties that it enables in building solutions that provide, provenance not only of data, but of financial data as well, tying the ESG solutions to both the data solutions to the financial solutions in combination in a transparent framework that we have in Hedera Hashgraph in particular, but in DLT more generally. I think there are ways to solve problems more fundamentally, again, from first principles, than have been possible in the past. And I'm sure that the DSF is going to take a look at that and be working on that. But those are a particular interest to us.
Okay. In the introduction, I was listening and the guys touched on the environment and this sort of misconception about blockchain. This is a hash graph, but blockchain in general, crypto in general, having a negative impact on the environment. And that's something that's becoming, more and more front and center and more important to people as the world wakes up to the impact that we're having on the planet. How do you think Hedera and the DLT Science Foundation can help solve some of those issues?
Yeah, well, there are two sides to that answer as well. First off, it happens to be that if you solve the problem of consensus in the way that Lehman has solved it in the form of Hashgraph, you sort of get for free incredible efficiency in terms of energy consumption. So UCL has published a study that demonstrates that on a per transaction basis, the energy consumption for Hedera is best in class, best in market. And it's fascinating to even see it when you compare to the existing payment rails platforms like Visa. Far better on a per transaction basis than Visa, let alone the other layer 1 and layer 2 protocols. So just an amazing feat there. It just comes for free, so to speak, if you're using Hashgraph. It has everything to do with the math, believe it or not. And so that's one answer to the question. Yeah. Then using DLT, as I just mentioned, as a tool to enable the vision of ESG most generally, but the provenance of the data that is being created that's related to the creation of both emissions tokens and carbon credits and offsets, all of that data provenance attached to the financial provenance, and ensuring that the solutions that we're building and care about are actually going to the communities that are intended to benefit from those solutions. All of that is enabled in a transparent way by DLT and Hedera specifically that I don't know any other way to accomplish. So it's both using DLT for realizing ESG goals and also having a DLT platform that is ultra efficient in its operation in its own right.
Okay, thank you. So I don't know if people noticed, but in the room next door where the refreshments are, there's a small cardboard sign with a QR code on it. You can scan that, and using a company called Dovu, which is of course built on Hedera Hashgraph, you can offset your carbon with credits from being here today. You can offset those through Dovu, which is just another fantastic real world visceral example of how we can use the technology in order to help the environment. So where do you see Hedera going? What's the end goal? I know there's no end as such, but you must have a dream or a vision in mind. I know that this is a big part of that because it comes through applications, study, education. But what's the end goal?
So fundamentally, Hedera provides plumbing. It's providing data plumbing for the creation of solutions. It's infrastructure. That's all it is. And I think success is defined as those people, the developers in the world, building solutions on top of this infrastructure, and the end users using those solutions, and they never know what's under the hood. They don't even think about the infrastructure. It just provides features and functionality that couldn't be provided, or enables that functionality that couldn't be enabled otherwise. So I view Hedera at maturity as providing a global layer of trust that sits on top of the internet that the developers of the world tap into and use, and end consumers benefit from without ever thinking about it in the first place. That's success. And, and I think we're going to get there pretty soon.
Trust less, Stephen.
Trust less. Trust less.
Trust less. Yeah. Trust less. Trust.
Trustless. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. We got there in the end.
Yeah, we get there.
Okay. So is there anything else you want to touch on regarding the road between where we are now and how we get to that end goal? Because the world we're in at the moment, we're kind of as an ecosystem, not just specifically to Hedera, but to any decent cryptographic platform. There's a lot of bad actors in the space, unfortunately, as there often is with any new technology. Throughout history, we've seen people taking advantage of other people through new technologies. And so how does a good real world utility based platform stand out from all that noise and kind of get away from the mess?
Well, I think that you need to start that way from the beginning, right? Yeah. I think it's really important, and we took great care when creating Hedera to ensure that we were always circumspect and approaching the market in the right way from a regulatory perspective. It's very difficult to do otherwise and then sort of change your colors, if you will, after the fact. And now we're beginning to see that, right? We're beginning to see that the regulatory environment has gotten very difficult in some parts of the world, certainly in the United States, has gotten better in others. But those platforms that have tried to be the good actors from the beginning, I believe are definitely going to benefit from that. And I do think that the regulatory clarity that we're all looking for will open the floodgates to mass adoption. And frankly, it's the floodgates they're just bursting at the seams as it is today. You see Wall Street already trying to go to market in some fundamental ways for the first time, frankly, that send strong signals to the regulators. And, I think we're close. It's taken a lot longer than I would have expected when we started all of this back in 2015 and then 2017. But I think we're going to get there.
And I think we're going to see exponential growth too, because as you say, once the dam breaks.
And it's a question of...
Once we have
clarity, then The organizations that want to participate in this space but have been reticent to do so because of the lack of clarity will then no longer have that as an excuse. And there's plenty of demand for these types of solutions.
Yeah. Okay. I think we're at the end of the 20 minutes, give or take. Is there anything else you want to say?
No, thank you. I just, again, delighted to be here and hope I get to speak to many of you here in the coming hour.
Well, thank you ever so much again for spending the time and flying all the way over from the US to be with us here. Yeah, Texas.
Yeah.
Here today. Well, I came to you last time, so you've come to me.
I've come back.
Yeah, that's it. Thank you very much for that. That was really interesting. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Now we have, thank you very much about Mance and Max. I think we have more chance to talk during the break afterwards. The apero, the garden, as Nikhil already informed. Now we have an interesting fireside chat. I'm very proud and honored to have here with us today Timothy Lane, the former Vice Governor of the Bank of Canada. I would like to introduce him briefly. Timothy was the former Deputy Governor of the Bank of Canada from 2009 to 2022. So you have seen quite a lot of things happening both in the traditional financial markets and in the crypto market, especially because Canada has been very active since many years in this space. Had a significant role in shaping monetary policy in the financial system, including the field of digital currencies. He holds a BA from Carleton University and PhD in economics from Western University. So Timothy Lane, I would like to welcome you on stage.
Thank you.
And he will be interviewed by Nimini Rubin, Chief of Global Policy at Hedera. I'm very glad that having the chance to work with her, being a UCL Council member of Hedera, and you know, working together with Nimini, and it was a great pleasure because of her expertise. And you will see from here, she's the Chief Global Policy of Hedera, and brings a wealth of experience from her time at Meta, and as a co-founder of Fix the System. She's noted for her policy work in the US Senate and House, and her efforts at Tetra Tech in advancing global electricity and interest access. And I think you were also at the Bank of New York, if I'm not wrong. So thank you and welcome to our stage.
Thank you, Paolo.
So the fireside chat will be around the topic that I think is very, very interesting because the title is the following: Rethinking Institutions for Our Digital Financial Future. So the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So I'm delighted to be here today with you and with Timothy Lane. I'm going to start with some questions, and then I'm going to turn it over to the audience to see if you have any juicy questions to ask. So think about that while we go on. So some argue that we're living in this period where technology is eating finance, and that our central banks are just unable to maintain their space. People say existing institutions were created for an obsolete economy, and they're not designed for the future. So I'm curious to hear from you about how we can rethink those institutions. Do you think central banking is outdated?
Okay, well, I guess first of all, I'd like to thank the organizers very much for inviting me. And yeah, I think it looks like a great gathering. I think a lot of very exciting things going on, and really fascinated in the work of the DLT Science Foundation and the amazing progress you've made already, and they're very early in a very young organization. So, yeah. So on your the question, I mean, certainly central banks in recent years have had some fairly serious challenges, but I think ironically, those kind of underscore the importance of central banks' core mandates. I mean, price stability and stability of the financial system are quite easy for people to think are boring and to take them for granted when they seem to be assured. But watch inflation go into double digits and see how upset the public gets. And so this sort of core mandate of central bank money in creating an anchor for the system and of the central bank in providing a lender of last resort is something that can't really be taken for granted and is still very relevant today. Now, the obvious question is, well, can this be replaced by some form of crypto asset, or I mean, could a crypto asset replace central bank money as the anchor of the system? I think certainly my view is that it would have to be very different than the crypto assets that we've seen to date. And looking at Bitcoin in particular, it has a very fundamental characteristic, which is that it has a mechanism and a set of incentive structures that limit the supply. On the other hand, the demand fluctuates around both with use and also with investment or speculation or whatever you call it. And so what we've seen is the value of Bitcoin has been all over the map. And I think one way of thinking about it is the inflation rate expressed in Bitcoin, which would be how many Bitcoins would it take to buy a representative bundle of consumer goods. And that inflation rate has varied from minus 50% to 300% or 400% over the last couple of years. So, is the public going to think that this is a very stable basis in which to be paid their salaries and pay for their pint of beer? I think not. And obviously, you can think of other kinds of crypto that might have a supply that's regulated automatically to give some stability of value. But I think, if anything, the experience of the last couple of years has suggested that there are serious flaws with taking existing policy frameworks in the face of new kinds of shocks. We've seen central banks trying to make monetary policy that was designed for one kind of economic environment, and we've had the whole set of shocks related to the pandemic and its aftermath, and very weird recovery from the pandemic, and we've seen the consequences of that. And so I think it should make us very cautious of sort of hardwiring any particular rules for controlling the supply of money. So anyway, that's, again, to say the technology can advance, but I think certainly my view at this time is that, I think in line with what Paolo was saying at the beginning, the killer app of DLT is probably not Bitcoin replacing central bank money. It's probably something that would come in the future.
So that leads directly to the question about central bank digital currencies. How do CBDCs fit in? The Atlantic Council yesterday issued a report saying that 130 countries are looking into CBDCs. It's 98% of the world's economy. How do they fit in? The Bank of England here, where we are in the UK, did a consultative report paper that people are responding to right now. But what do you think?
Well, certainly, it's true that most central banks are now looking at CBDC. And when I was at the Bank of Canada, I was heavily involved in that, leading that project. And I would say at this point, there's generally the view of most advanced country economy central banks, and we see this across, Bank of England, ECB, Federal Reserve, Bank of Japan, and others, has been typically openness to consider, but still a degree of questioning. And ultimately, I think there's a sense that there are a number of issues that would have to be addressed in launching a CBDC, and there's certainly generally a consensus about how to think about some of those questions. But I think the fundamental question is, well, what would it be for? And a number of central banks have been thinking, well, okay, we see cash disappearing in the economy, and this has been the position particularly dramatic in countries like Sweden, where cash has been largely disappearing from everyday use. And then the issue is, well, maybe there should still be a form of publicly issued money that is available to the public, even when cash is no longer economical because of the cost of distributing it and so on. But then the question is, well, would the public use it, and what would they use it for? And since we've spent, policymakers really ever since the Great Depression of the 1930s have spent a lot of effort trying to make bank money, bank deposit money, kind of indistinguishable in terms of its safety and soundness from the cash that the central banks issue to the public. It's less clear that the public would actually care whether they have central bank money to spend or whether they have just deposit money like they use electronically using their contactless payments instruments already. Now, there is another set of issues, which I think is still more the issues of the future and probably relates more to the work of DSF, which is, there's a lot of progress in distributed ledgers and how those could be applied to a whole lot of different ways of organizing transactions in the economy. And it is possible that as those become more widely adopted, there could be a role to have a safe, standardized, officially issued and low cost, safe method of payment. And that could be a role of central bank digital currency within that. But that's a little different from the way that cash is used nowadays to buy newspapers and chocolate bars. It's more sort of something that could be used in a wider set of transactions. So I think that's probably something for the future, but certainly well worth considering.
So that concept of safety leads us to thinking about regulation.
Yeah.
And my competitive self wanted to ask you what countries regulating digital assets and cryptocurrencies best, but I'll diplomatically ask you, what countries are doing it well, and are they converging on a view?
Okay, well, I think a number of countries are. I think everybody's making progress in this direction. I would say that certainly some countries have faced greater challenges than others, and particularly, I think Mance Harmon was mentioning, the U.S. I think is facing its usual challenges of regulatory fragmentation, which have probably made it more difficult to find a coherent structure. And frankly, in Canada, we also have a problem of fragmentation of our regulatory structure. We've seen other jurisdictions have somehow got past that and have found approaches to regulating it that have been workable. But I would say everybody's making progress. It's just that the challenges of getting coherence across the different regulatory approaches is probably greater in some jurisdictions than in others. I think generally there's agreement that in regulating, what you need to look at the underlying economics, basically who is lending what to whom, or who's taking what risks, and how are the risks being managed, and who has what incentives to manage those risks. And as we think about regulation, I think it's important to remember that a lot of the problems we've seen in the digital finance space lately are pretty old school problems. I mean, there are things like connected lending, there are things like excessive leverage, like collateral whose value is excessive, is too much directly correlated with the credit risk that's being collateralized, and then good old-fashioned fraud and theft. And those things, I think, are often obscured when people get too bogged down in the technology and they don't kind of look at the underlying economics. But I think there's generally a recognition that regulators need to do a better job of trying to get at the economics and to understand that, and then to regulate the principle is, same business, same risk, same rules. And so to find a framework that manages those risks effectively.
Thank you. Before I go on with other questions, I want to pause here to see if there's any juicy ones in our audience. There's one right here. Yeah.
Call me Tim. Okay.
Tim, there's a notion today that the C word is actually associated with nefarious activities. And the entire space has been tagged, and all the entrepreneurs in that space have been tagged with, oh, these are not ethical people. This is a pyramid scheme. Is there some commentary from either you Nilmini or Tim? And what do you guys observe from your peers in the market?
Okay, well, I mean, certainly, I think it is fair to say that the events of the last year or so have tarnished the reputation of a lot of this stuff. But at the same time, recognizing the fact that there is important and valuable technology here. It's many people who are working on solutions to genuine problems. I mean, these are technologies that offer huge potential to use information more efficiently, to increase competition and choice, to cut out various intermediate steps in transactions, to cut out middlemen and the cuts that they take of every transaction, and that there are a number of areas in the financial system, both within each country and globally, that these technologies provide huge potential to make improvements in. And so I think it's important for people to keep in mind that, as in any new sphere, any innovative sphere, there are going to be bad players, and we have to be wary of them and to make sure that we don't get carried away with the hype and sort of ignoring the fact that that some of these bad things are going on. But at the same time, we have to recognize the fact that the potential is there, and it needs to be developed.
So do you think that the people sitting in international financial institutions now understand that the stink of what happened is not on the entire crypto, blockchain, DLT community?
Say there's probably a range of views, but I think that I would say there's a range of views that some people are, at the spectrum of kind of enthusiastic while at the same time recognizing you have to be careful versus thinking that there are obviously some jurisdictions, China, for example, that's just banned crypto and a number of years ago, and other jurisdictions that are trying to be much more open to it. And I would say that there's not a uniform view in the whole international community.
Do you have a question all the way in the back?
Yes, hello. I'll stand up because I'm so far back. I'm Mike Dury. I'm with an organization called the Digital Economist, and we've done some research, well, actually a large body of research on decentralized governance and also using DLT for track and trace and financial transparency. And I found this last question very interesting, and your response, because what we've experienced is you have both polar opposites. You have people who associate anything vaguely related to crypto as fraud by any other name, and on the other hand, the transparency side scares people because, in fact, it can be used to prevent fraud or at least make it very, very difficult. And I just wonder if you have any comments on the solution currently being implemented in India.
Well, I can't really comment specifically on India's solution, but I think on the more general point, certainly agree that the transparency that the DLT offers is something that does have a lot of potential to actually combat fraud and various financial abuses, money laundering, and so on. You can have technology that to track and trace transactions, and that is something that does offer very important potential. Now, I would say it's potential that's as yet mostly unexploited, and I think regulators need to, both the technologists and the regulators, I think, need to make a lot more progress in being able to apply these things in a way that actually addresses some of the issues. But yeah, certainly. On the one hand, initially the view was, well, the pseudonymity of, for example, of Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies makes it a lot more vulnerable to abuse. It makes it a tool for ransom, for collecting ransoms and payments for illicit transactions and that sort of thing. But then, given that there is the potential to track all these things, then that's that is something that should be developed.
Do we have another question from the audience?
One over here.
Okay.
Just on the digital central bank digital currency.
Yeah.
In a sort of thought experiment where every country has a central bank currency, and we can all store them in our. Oh, sorry.
As a thought experiment where every country has a digital currency, we can all store them in our wallets or our USB sticks or whatever it is we're going to do with them. I would imagine that for probably 90% of the population of the world, 90% of the time, what they actually want is US dollars. I mean, people in Venezuela and Argentina, they're always held up by the Bitcoin people, but actually they don't want Bitcoins, they want dollars. So in that world, wouldn't 160, 170 central bank governors have nothing to do? They could just put their feet up because, there's a lot of countries where literally nobody would use the local currency.
Well, this is a concern, I think, with the spread of any kind of digital currency, including central bank digital currencies, is the potential for currency substitution and for a loss of monetary sovereignty by countries. And in a sense, in some countries, the thinking is, well, if other countries are issuing, as particularly large jurisdictions like the U.S. were to introduce a central bank digital currency, then the sort of if they do it, we'll have to do it too, because otherwise we'll lose control of our own price level, and people will be pricing everything in U.S. dollars instead of in our domestic currency, and then it'll be basically the Federal Reserve that'll be controlling the price level in our country, and so that's been one of the motivations of central banks outside of the U.S. to move ahead in developing a CBDC, obviously the case. Economists for a long time, for quite a long time, have debated the merits of common currency areas across a number of countries, and I think there's been general agreement that the world is probably not an optimum currency area, in the sense that there's some benefit to having different currencies in different parts of the world, just because you've got different economic forces at work, and there's benefit to allowing the exchange rate of currencies to vary as those economic shocks occur, and to provide a buffer against them. So that a world where you have sort of one dominant digital currency in use everywhere is probably not the best world from a point of view of economic stability.
So I'll do one last follow-on question on that. My first job in an office is at the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, so I appreciate the central banker. But could you tell us about privacy issues? It seems like the big argument against central bank digital currencies is privacy, and it kind of unites both sides of the aisle in different people concerned about the privacy risks. So has anyone figured that out, how to deal with privacy and CBDCs?
Well, certainly privacy has been one of the main issues that central banks that have been looking at CBDC have been looking at, because obviously bank money is not private. Your bank knows exactly how much money you've got. They know who you've paid the money to and for what purposes and that kind of thing. Cash is private in the sense that you can at least it's private up to a point. If you withdraw more than $10,000, then the bank has to report that. If you take more than $10,000 across the border, then you're supposed to report it. But in small quantities, cash is private. So, the issue is, if you're thinking of a central bank digital currency, there's a recognition that if we're thinking of something that would deliver to the public something similar to what cash does, then immediately where you go is, well, could it be as private as cash? And the immediate answer is, well, that could be a problem if, in the sense that we know that cash, being private, also makes it an ideal medium for a lot of illicit transactions, for money laundering, terrorist financing, and various other purposes. And so if a central bank digital currency were made as private as cash is, then that would open the door for all that kind of illicit behavior. But then the problem is, how do you make? So I think there's generally a sense that I think most central banks that have been working on CBDC, and in advanced economies, have been thinking, well, how do we trying to think about how would we make it as private as possible while still having the adequate safeguards against that kind of illegality, and the sort of solutions. I mean, there've been possibility of having some form of encryption where the central bank wouldn't be able to unlock the encryption, but certain under certain conditions it could be unlocked. For example, if the police were investigating a crime and had a warrant, a search warrant, then they could unlock the code or something like that. I mean, you can imagine solutions along those lines. Bank of England has also been, another solution. A number of central banks have been looking at is a bit like what the Bank of England was recently kind of floating, which is the idea that the central bank might issue the digital currency, but the wallets would be maintained by private payment service providers, and they would be responsible for implementing sort of anti-money laundering, know your customer, and that kind of safeguards. And so the central bank wouldn't have to know, or in fact wouldn't be able to know, who's holding each unit of the digital currency. It would be the payment service providers that would have that information, and so they would be operating. And they would be responsible for maintaining the privacy of their customers. So there are solutions, but again, I think these still remain to be implemented, of course.
Great. Well, thank you so much to Timothy Lane for being with us. We can now all fondly call him Tim.
Okay.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Next, it's my pleasure to introduce Alastair Moore, who's going to be talking about the project Songbits. Alastair is a senior AI executive with a PhD in machine learning and over 15 years of domain experience. He is a co-founder of the AI venture Italia that was acquired by WPP, and he is, of course, a professor at UCL and Peking University. Please.
I guess in this context, I'm the AI mentor for the Royal Academy of Engineering, although I actually have not come to the building very often. I'm talking about a company called Songbits. I was told to be quick. I was like, I don't really want to be. I was going to talk at great length, but I will skip through. I treated this exercise as much as a grant reporting exercise as anything, right? So I've got, Gantt charts and deliverables, and probably don't have anything quite as inspiring as Michael's delivery. But the main idea behind Songbits in the entertainment and the content space is around enabling the creator slightly differently, financializing a music asset in a different way. Some of the language in this presentation is presented sort of from the standpoint of the label or the catalog owner. I realize this is going to be pushed out publicly at some point. I want to say you could equally frame the language from the perspective of the fan or the artist. People behind the company, Dave Stewart sends his regards. He's sitting probably drinking vodka in Nashville or the Bahamas as we speak. But people with an equivalent amount of experience in the domain or sector as Michael. I guess Dave is recently added to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. The two Sheffield brothers are the sons of the Trident Studios, so that recorded I guess, the Beatles and Bowie, et cetera, et cetera. My involvement in this is not to do with AI and not to a huge extent to do with the technology underlying the DLT system, although I have a Texan wife of 18 years. So I'm looking forward to going and working with Hedera in more detail going forward. But I guess my sort of school of management type work recently has been around reciprocity, sharing value, and how do you share value, and how do you build systems that share value? And obviously the DLT system is an underlying strata or a manifold in which you can do that. So what does Songbits do? Songbits tries to think about different ways of distributing value from the underlying asset class, which are songs. It fractionalizes it in potentially lots of different ways, but at the moment, it's basically allowing you to sell a fraction of the royalty stream. And the reason that is interesting I haven't detailed the solution here, but there are lots of ways of sharing value across the fan base in slightly different ways. The current system, the idea is you take a representation of the song, you fractionalize it, and you sell it in different ways. And the way that we are currently selling it is streaming rights only, and you're selling part of the song to the fan base is the easy way to describe it. So rather than you holding onto this asset that generates a yield over a long period of time, you sell some part of that estimated yield. We can talk about pricing. This part of the system works. The stuff on the right-hand side, we are still designing and thinking about, and that is largely what the grant is helping us do. That is a slide that no longer works now that it's been, destroyed in translation. Something about DLT protocols probably going into content delivery. But you can still see the main part. You can still see the main takeaway. Sorry, I'm thinking this is a lecture. It's not, right? I'm supposed to be presenting. In a catalogue of songs, a sort of power law distributed, right? A few songs make an awful lot of money and most of the songs don't make much money. But it doesn't really capture the cultural value, right? If you played the song at your wedding, right? Or you played the song when you watched the sunset go down, the song that happens to be in the very long tail has some significant value to you. And so what we're trying to do is figure out different discounted cash flow models. How do you move, those are those other squiggly lines, right? How do you move the return that you get on an asset around to suit different actors or participants in the system? Current MVP works on a whole load of things. I guess what we've mainly done in the first tranche of funding is to build a demonstrator. So we can sell songs, we can sell fractionalized parts of songs, and most importantly, we can reconcile the royalties to demonstrate that it comes back through the system. The ledger that underpins most of this at the moment is Circle. Like I said, the secondary market type models that we're working on at the moment are likely to be on Hedera. Very simple idea. You start with a whole song and you sell half of it. The business model I will talk about at greater length is to do with the 2.5%. But Dave actually tried to start doing this about a decade ago with Visa and gave up because Visa were like, well, don't know whether we should let that work that way. So, this has been a long-term project. You could do something slightly different. Again, I'm making this kind of simple. You only own 40% of the song. I'm not going to go into the nuances of the kind of copyright agreements, but you don't have to sell the whole thing. But the main idea here, again, is mutualization or reciprocity. How do you divide it up? And you can divide up the royalties in the way that they currently stand on a contract, or you can do all sorts of different variants. And I guess the systems that we're interested in exploring do all sorts of different variants. Why is this interesting? This is interesting principally as a method of fan engagement. How do you alter the return structure, right? How do you incentivize someone to buy or to own or to be belong to, right? It's a different way, perhaps of reinventing the fan club, right? You don't just have a copy of the thing, you have the actual thing. Or in some sense, if the artist does well, you also do well too. And some of it's about realizing value. So here's a song where if you hold for long enough, we've done some pricing modeling as part of the grant. Obviously, you can start to earn money in some sense. That's one of Dave's songs, so 30,000. He doesn't like this slide. Maybe you can edit this bit out of the broadcast, right? Because he's like, it's got to be worth more than that. I'm like, Dave, look at the numbers, right? So here's a more expensive song, 14 million. Again, like exactly how you do the price modeling and the asset estimation is a dark art at the moment. We are trying to apply some science to it. Broadly speaking, we think that lots of big catalogs, song is worth about 10 to 15K over the lifetime of the song. What's the lifetime of the song? 5 years, 14 years, 25 years, 30 years. There's all sorts of different ways to think about it. But for large catalog owners, 50,000 songs and up, the sort of unrealized value sitting on your P&L somehow is in the hundreds of millions. And so whilst there's record labels that don't have any interest in necessarily freeing up their cash flow, they still have an interest in being able to orchestrate, organize, enable, create value for the fan base that their products support. Come back to the business model, these 2%. We also think, broadly speaking, not this year, not next year, but at some point, there's a different way to trade some of these asset classes, right? There's different indexes that are potentially creation. Yes, I want to buy some part of the song I played at my wedding because it's the thing that has emotive value to me. But actually what I'm really interested in is like early 90s Detroit hard house. How do I buy that? You can't really, right? You can buy into certain sorts of funds that are listed, but you can't really curate your own ownership models. And so I think that's, again, when we think about how to trade these assets differently, there are all sorts of business models that become interesting. Why hasn't anyone done this anywhere already? The legal side is confusing and complicated. It's complicated enough that during the duration of the grant, I'm still trying to hit a moving target, right? So this is the FCA's guidance from this month. Fan bits, right, or fan coins or fan tokens, depending on how you want to refer to it, are now going to be called restricted mass market investments. Doesn't sound as fun. But broadly speaking, this stuff will be legal. It's a very gray area at the moment, but it will be legal in some way, shape or form, right? You will be allowed to sell a version of a crypto asset to a retail audience in the UK, at least, and I think everyone will follow suit. It comes into several different problems that are all being resolved by different regulations, not least the Consumer Duty of Care Act in the UK. This will become clearer during this year, right? By Q4 this year, there will be a mandate to be able to sell these types of assets to the general public, and they will be treated different from a full security. How does this work at a national, international level? How does a label in LA that is, remunerating an artist from Japan that is selling mainly to a European buyer work? Who knows? But we're trying to come up with some ideas. We are working on a whole load of sort of contracting standards. How do you move the existing recording contracts onto smart contracts so that you can, again, instrument and program certain types of products? Oops. And the clicker's broken, which means I should wrap up. Next steps. This is my grant reporting hat. Oops. First of all, it's working. So we're talking about enabling a creator. Here is a song by a DJ called Ashley Wallbridge. There's the quote, there's the takeaway, right? I made more money in 30 minutes than 3 years of streaming because he enabled his fan base to support his art, basically. What have we done so far? We've got it working end to end. We've done the reconciliation and the royalties piece. The next step in the next sort of 3 months is the legal side to figure out exactly how we can present and sell this asset, given the best legal guidance, and it will probably change next year, but we'll be, at least for the beginning of the year, end of the year, we'll be working. And then we are working on some models for how to do secondaries, and again, some technology and some standard for how you would do secondaries for these types of asset classes. That was Song Bits. Thank you very much. Is that fast enough? What, one question? No questions. Got to come and have a drink with me later. Thank you.
Can you hear me? I hope you can hear me. So now we are setting up the stage, right? And we're going to have the panel. I think this is the last part of the events after we will have the drinks. And it will be half an hour. So try to resist for half an hour, and then we will move to the garden, having the drinks. I'm very glad that Kristina she's my friend since many years. We are sharing the same country when I'm in Italy. I'm very happy to see her. We didn't have the chance lately, but very soon, I promise you. Kristina Lucrezia Cornèr, she's the editor-in-chief of Cointelegraph and the head of features. And she holds a position as managing editor, as I said, and she has a master's degree in political science and classical philology. And her work focuses on the translation of complex innovations into simple language and giving the platform to visionaries in the industry. So I would like to welcome you on stage, Kristina.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Paolo. And thank you for the fourth chair. I thought that it wasn't by chance that I put here, so I actually can be here as well. Otherwise, I wouldn't.
I can introduce the panelists.
Please.
Yes,
Thank you.
And also I'm very, very glad that Fariel Salahuddin, correct me if I'm wrong, accepted my invitation to join us today for this panel. I hope you will have the chance to talk to her even after during the drinks afterwards, because she can really. Her personal experience is really enlightening. And I was watching her TED Talk that she gave a few years ago, and I was really inspired. So she's the founder and the CEO of UpTrade. Is a recognized authority in the energy finance and renewable energy policy, having advised governments and private sectors globally, also known for her work in digitizing smallholder farming in Pakistan. And she's a TED Fellow, and was a Cartier Women Initiative finalist in 2019. Thank you for having accepted. I welcome you on stage. And I'm also very happy that Auronda accepted my invitation. And I'm very glad to have you here. She's the director of the Infinity Art Museum and curator of Decentral Art Pavilion. Auronda, she's a pioneer in the intersection of digital art and Web3, with over 2 decades of experience in art and culture. She has been working with Plus8 and the UK Parliament, and she's curating the Decentral Art Pavilion for the 2024 Venice Art Biennale. Thank you, Auronda. Welcome you on stage. And finally, I'm also very glad to have you here, Teana Becker-Taylor. We met just a few days ago in Zurich. And she will bring back finance on the stage. So she's a Vice President of Policy and Regulatory Strategy EMEA for Cycle, a financial technology company and sole issuer of the digital currency USD coin and the Euro coin. Teana works directly with policymakers on the development of regulatory policy for digital currencies. Welcome you on stage. So as you can see, from the diversity of the panelists, we want to go broader. We want to understand how we can rebuild trust in crypto, answering the call to the challenge. Thank you to you all.
Thank you so much, Paolo. And you gain us 5 minutes of intro questions, so I think we can start from the scratch. And I think if we talk about trust, we first definitely need to start with ourselves. So my first question is, why do you trust in crypto? And why do you trust in crypto 24/7? Because crypto is never sleeping. It's like a volcano that is always active. And it's not only work, but it's usually life for those who are working in crypto. So what is the factors that make you trust in what you're doing? And what have enabled you to choose crypto and blockchain as the tool for your business ideas? Let's start with you, Fariel, maybe.
Sure. So my story begins in a very interesting way. I never thought I would be doing what I do now. I walked into a village in Pakistan to install a solar pump. And what happened was that the community just did not have enough cash to purchase this. But what they did have was a lot of goats. And so I accepted the payment in goats. and they got a bump. And that really made me think about what is money for us and how has it changed. So for me, the blockchain part comes in where I started thinking about if goats can be money, and they were at some point in time, and now that we are at this point in time where we have this technology to make them digitized and transfer value, maybe we can go back to this form where farmers and marginalized communities can use assets which they do have, livestock, produce, as a means of exchange instead of fiat at this point. So that's my part in this.
Fascinating project. Thank you so much. Auronda, what is your killer app?
For me, the key point is because the artists trust in crypto. Then if artists and collector trust, for me, is the most important things. And they trust in crypto because they got the power now. And now museum director and gallery have less power. And the artists have got the power on their artwork, the first time in the history of art, because they got control from the government, from the gallery. Now they can take more percentage, like 99%. Before gallery, they took like 60%, 80%, 90%. It was crazy because it's your own artwork. That's the point for me that is really important. In fact, if artists trust in crypto, I trust in crypto.
Thank you very much, Auronda. Teana.
Well, no one's ever tried to pay me in goats, but I wish that they would because they're so cute. I love goats. I spent the majority of my career in traditional finance and transaction banking and went through a number of cycles, the dot-com boom, I'm aging myself, I know, and the financial crisis of 2008, where I think trust was really compromised. And for me at that time, I had been working on a number of mobile money initiatives and financial inclusion initiatives and ways in which we could digitize supply chains that are very expensive for people that don't have significant amounts of deposits, whether those are small businesses or individuals. So for me, I think the trust factor originally came from the fact that I don't actually have to trust this. I can look at the transactions on chain and know what's happening. The community collaboration around the validation of these monetary systems and the ability to be able to serve underserved communities in faster, cheaper, more efficient and transparent ways is really what brought me to this industry and certainly what keeps me here.
Thank you so much. You mentioned a very important point here. Community, we'll definitely talk about community a lot today. My factor, I would say, is that there are so many amazing ideas. I've been working at Cointelegraph for the last 6 years, and it's just an amazing amount of passionate people who really believe in their ideas that are aiming at changing the world. And there is so much there, but in my opinion, the biggest challenge is actually the confusion that is coming out of this incredible amount of ideas that are sometimes confusing even in the heads of the creators. I'm not even telling about if we compare different communities and different circles, academia, business, regulators, mainstream audience. So, Auronda, I remember you told me once that one of the art collector that is working with you told you that I do trust in NFTs, but I do not trust in crypto. So how would you see this unifying of the front that we are building here in order to make sure that using one term, we are actually backing the other, because crypto is a case of blockchain. Money is just one of the application of crypto, because in the end of the day, we're talking about assets, and it's much more than just money and means of payment. How do you see this developing in the art market, this understanding and education and collaboration between different facets of blockchain crypto?
Actually, it's not totally different from the contemporary art world. I mean, when recently I was speaking with this collector and he told me I trust in NFT, not in cryptocurrency. And there is a reason then it's the same in contemporary art, because if the market go down, if your cryptocurrency lose all the value, at least you have your artwork at home and doesn't care. Then it's not like that you invest in gas and oil. You cannot have your tank of oil at home. And it's true. Then if everything go wrong, you have your beautiful collection at home and you can show it to your friend and you can enjoy your collection and nothing, the value of your collection is not only about money. I mean, crypto art is not only about money.
So what is it for you? The creative economy that is represented by the Web3 and the DLT?
It's created for sure by collector and artist. They are the key point for me. And the curator are only, like say, organizing their idea to show what they think.
I like this idea of creative economy that is given to us by the technology. Let's go from collectors to goats. Is there any difference for them whether we are tokenizing them on blockchain or not? And is there a difference for the community that you're working with? So what is the additional value that blockchain is giving?
So this was a point which was mentioned earlier on as well. The idea of track and trace and the idea of farm to fork, where is the food coming from, especially when we talk about meat, which has negative side effects, of course. In this case, we can actually tell there are two types of farmers, there are two types of meat. Well, there are many now, but two primarily. Those that are raised by smallholder farmers, and these are primarily smaller animals, and these animals are raised more humanely. They are literally part of, raised very kindly, organic. And then there are factory farmed animals. And if you have to choose your meat, I think I would want to eat what is being raised more humanely and at least benefiting the farmers that are raising them. The idea of blockchain and being able to tell where this meat is coming from, especially smallholder farmers, adds a lot of value to the farmers as well, the track and trace.
I think this is a very important application of blockchain that is not developed in full, especially by big brands. And they are usually voting for NFTs, not as artist creativity, but rather as tokenizing some brand items instead of applying blockchain to tracking and traceability and transparency. And well, I wouldn't mention concrete brands, but as journalists, we approach them and ask, are you planning to put on blockchain the production of these bags that cost $30,000 for the clients? And how much does it cost to you? And who is producing them? Where? How old are these people who are producing this? And I don't see that much desire to actually apply blockchain to really important things that are not yet presented in the traditional finance. And I think that regulators also look forward to this application. In your opinion, Teana, in what do regulators trust?
Well, at the moment now, not a whole lot, truthfully. So there's been certainly in the digital asset markets, crypto capital markets, a number of failures over the last year that have really challenged confidence. and the market integrity of the marketplaces in which these assets trade. However, I think that overall, the use cases that are being built by companies like Cornèr that enable some of that provenance tracking, that enable, greener blockchains and validation mechanisms, and the focus around how we're using these tokens and tokenomics is shifting sentiment. The company I work for issues what's commonly referred to as a stable coin. We prefer digital currency or tokenized cash. These stable coins are fully fiat backed, meaning that we hold all of the reserves for all of the tokens that we issue in segregated accounts that aren't hypothecated. So the money isn't lent, it isn't spent in any other way other than, in service of holding those reserves. And so that what that allows that token to do is operate like digital cash, and it's internet ready, and so can move at the speed of the internet. One of the key use cases that has really taken off is cross-border payments, as you could expect. For people that need to send money in a cross-border fashion regularly, it can be very, very expensive to do so today. And it's difficult to respond to things like humanitarian crisis, humanitarian aid in situations like, the war in Ukraine or, the earthquake in Turkey and Syria. And so if we think back to, the days when we were giving, COVID entitlements, for example, this could take, weeks and months to reach people that needed the money. We have a pilot that went live in December to send funds directly to Ukrainians who have been displaced by the war. That uses the Stellar Network and MoneyGram International and USDC, and that is with the UN, UNHCR, the High Refugee Commission, that's enabled that pilot. So that's a tangible use case that we can talk to regulators about to show. And we're talking about, it's not just about kind of people moving money around for the sake of kind of capital market capitalization. We're really using these assets to deploy value in faster, cheaper, and more transparent ways. And I think that's another thing when you look at things like NGO disbursements. There's a lot of slippage in that system normally. I'm sure you can attest to that. And so this way, when we are deploying these funds, we know that they're getting to exactly where they're intended and they're being spent exactly how it's intended to be spent. So that's one use case. And I think what the industry needs to do is really work on sharing more of those. The Polygon blockchain now has an open source project underway for creators and market participants to aggregate these different use cases so that we can all learn from each other and be able to talk about them with a little bit more, authority and bring them to the forefront more. Because until we're kind of demonstrating how this stuff is useful, I think policymakers will continue to be skeptical.
You mentioned this amazing use cases, but I guess we all agree that this is not the killer app of blockchain and the crypto native.
Do we agree on that? I don't know that I agree on that.
Well, killer app is something that will be recognized by mainstream community, and it's not recognized yet. So sure. What should we do in order to make it recognizable by the mainstream community? Because I guess the problem is that it has not this access to the mainstream audience as it should have.
Sure. Well, I think one of those things that's preventing that is indeed regulation. And we're starting to see that materially accelerate at an incredible pace. So just today, literally hours ago, the Financial Services and Markets Bill in the UK, which is the most major piece of financial services regulation in the last 20 years, was just received royal assent, signed by the King, job done, laws in place. That brings stablecoins into the regulated perimeter. So over the next 12 months, we will be consulting with regulators around the specific rules of how that's going to happen. Additionally, amendments were added to that bill to bring other types of crypto assets into the regulated perimeter, and things like financial promotions that involve crypto will now be regulated. So for stablecoins to really be part of mass adoption in payment stacks and merchant acceptance and financial institutions, they need to be regulated. And so I think that having regulatory clarity allows some of those maybe more skeptical types of businesses that have been hesitant to operate in the space to now come in. We're seeing stablecoin regulation in Hong Kong. The US is progressing both market integrity, market conduct legislation, as well as stablecoin regulation. And then, of course, we have the market and crypto assets regulation in Europe, which basically gives a completely holistic framework for most crypto asset market participants, exclusive of DeFi, that will come into force in the next 12 and then 18 months. So that's an entire trading block of 27 member countries that now have regulatory clarity around how they can market and use and build services for consumers in a way where they feel confident that they're not going to be shut down. So I think that in a lot of industries, regulation becomes an impediment. And I think in this industry, it is absolute driver for growth.
I like this thinking a lot. Another driver for growth has been marketing. And marketing in NFTs has been involving a lot of influencers. By some, it's considered a good thing for crypto because, well, it's recognizable. It becomes more mainstream. For others, it's actually a disadvantage of the industry because we involve people who do not know what they're talking about. And then there have been influencer suits now related to FTX and other big collapses. So Auronda, how do you see this NFT business developing through influencers and brands? And how can it help creative economy and artists? And well, we've been talking today about music, about video content, about media. How can it help and how can it impede actually and maybe create additional channels?
For example, we don't use influencer in contemporary art. The influencer are the museum director or the gallery manager, no, the gallery director or the curator. In NFT doesn't exist this ecosystem. There are some influencer that maybe they are not art historian. Then they have a different approach. And in general, now there is like an opposite point of view because the artists, NFT artists, they trust more in curator and museum director because compared to before, for example, recently Louvre make an acquisition about NFT. In their collection, like a CryptoPunk. Never happened before in a traditional museum, even in Miami and other museum. Then now the NFT artists, they trust more in museum and curator.
We have to wrap up, and I really would love to talk about the community, local communities, especially those that are not gathering in Davos or in other big events that we are all also lucky to go to, but some communities that actually do not even have sometimes access to financial services. So how do you think we can scale this community adoption of blockchain? How do your example can help other communities to develop similar solutions, and what we as an industry, as a community can do in order to involve more people from all type of countries and backgrounds?
That's a really interesting question. And it's one which I actually ponder over because yes, it's two very different worlds that my company and I seem to be straddling. On the one side, we are talking about blockchain and cryptos. And then on the other side, there are these communities that really, are living in like 200 years back in time. But I'm very optimistic about technology and being the driving force which brings these communities in a positive way to the future, or rather to our present, where they can access whatever they need and which they aren't able to afford in the current financial system because of access, because of penalization, because of distance. Why can't they use what they have as money? And if technology can allow for that, I think that would be a great step forward for us as living in this time. If we can make that happen, and I'm trying to do that. I think the help that we need is, most of these communities don't even have a smartphone. Maybe one person in a community will have a normal digital phone. So that's the gap that we're talking about, and I'm still trying to answer that question.
Thank you so much. And thank you very much, DLT Science Foundation. I'm pretty sure that you will be one of those channels that will connect, bridge communities, projects, ideas, and along with all the partners. Thank you so much for this honor to be here today at the launch. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you to all of you. It was great, and I hope we can have the chance to talk further during the drink. So now I would like, first of all, to thank you, all of you, for joining us today. Thank you all the representatives from Edera, Mance, the board members, and Harmon, and all the members of the university network that joining us today. I would like to thank, of course, Nikhil, Amy from our team that organized this event. And Amy is a very important person because now we follow her, and we show us where the wine is. So thank you again, and please follow us in the next weeks. You will see more progress from us. Some tools that we will bring on the market that will fight information pollution, and also some tools about ESG. Thank you.